Hi, everyone. We're just going to wait till everyone connects to audio and we'll be getting started shortly. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are excited to welcome you. My name is Jamie Arcolio. I'm an outreach and education advisor with the student recruitment team at Mohawk College. And I am joined by my colleague, Samantha Walker, who will be moderating the chat, our diagnostic cardiac sonography program coordinator, Jennifer Burton, along with Tammy Capone from our admissions team. Before we get started, this is just a reminder to participants to please kindly keep your video and microphones turned off during the session. You are welcome to use the chat feature to ask any questions throughout the course of the presentation. We will get to answering your questions once the presentation is completed. We are recording today's session for future use and for it to be viewed on our program pages. Mohawk College continues to adapt plans in response to the COVID-19 pandemic based on the guidance from our local public health authority. I'd encourage everyone to check updates about COVID-19 on the Mohawk College website. So now I will hand it over to Jennifer to provide you with more information about the Diagnostic Cardiac Sonography program.
Thank you, Jamie, and welcome everyone. My name is Jennifer Burton, and I am a cardiac sonographer by trade, but I'm also an educator and the coordinator for the Diagnostic Cardiac Sonography program at Mohawk College. And I'm so grateful that all of you can attend this morning's meeting. And the outcome is that you can walk away from today's meeting with a bit more information, not only about the program, but about the admission process. Next slide, please. So just before we get into the admission side of things, into the program, I just wanted to give everyone a snapshot of what is sonography, what is the profession, and what the program entails. So if you don't already know or have a good idea what sonography is, we have two terms that we use, either cardiac sonographer or diagnostic medical sonographer. In addition to today's session, there's lots of resources for you to reach out to find out more about the profession and to find out what entails as roles and responsibilities for a cardiac sonographer. There's a lovely video that I will share the link in the chat from a fellow colleague, pediatric sonographer in the Alberta Health Sciences, that really talks about the profession and why we are so passionate about it. So I will just right now add that link for anyone that wants to look at that video, as it just gives a great explanation of why we do it in the first place. As you know, sonography is a form of ultrasound, and the program that we have well established here at Mohawk College is a program solely looking at ultrasound of the heart, and that's the cardiac sonography piece. There is a high demand for cardiac sonographers, not only just in Ontario, but across the nation. We're finding that aging population and with a high prevalence of cardiovascular diseases, coupled with the fact that diagnostic ultrasound is a highly diagnostic tool, put these all together and it makes us for a very good career potential. The outcomes for our students, or the employment rate for our students, are very high. And that's something that I'm sure every applicant would like to hear. So lots of jobs out there across the nation and in Ontario, and it will continue to grow. The best resource for you is our national organization in Sonography Canada, and there's a link to the website within this slide. It will tell you a lot of information about the career, how to become registered to perform cardiac sonography within the nation, and lots of best practices for becoming a cardiac sonographer. It is our national organization, and they produce a national competency profile for cardiac sonographers, of which our Mohawk College program teaches too. Next slide, please. Just to, share my passion about cardiac sonography, I just thought I would put down a couple key points about cardiac sonography. Another word that you will hear out in industry and certainly in our program, which means the same as diagnostic cardiac sonography, is echocardiography. And it is, again, amazing profession, one that I'm very passionate about. But what it is that we are ultrasound of the heart, and in doing so, we can assess structure and function in real-time diagnostic feedback. It is ultrasound of just solely one organ. So we do not focus on ultrasound of any other systems or any other organs. We focus on the heart. And that is in part because the heart is a complex organ. It has lots of different moving parts, lots of physiologic things happening every time it beats. We act in diagnostic ultrasound in acute care settings, and we have to deal with many types of patients that have comorbidities and lots of cardiovascular diseases. So oftentimes our cardiac sonographers are working with critically ill patients. In order to do that and work with these type of patients, you need to be able to think on your feet and be what I like to term an imaging detective. This is a profession where we don't just kind of go through the motions and take a set of pictures of the heart. We're actually having to critically think on our feet as we take a set of images of that patient's heart. It's like we're telling a story about that patient's heart at that given point in time. In addition to the knowledge that we require to take these images of the patient's heart, we also have to focus on our professional behaviors. We have to be empathetic and caring and very friendly with the patients and or their family members that accompany them to the cardiac sonography exam. It is a physical job. We are having to challenge ourselves with scanning patients of many different sizes and shapes. And that does often pose ergonomic challenges. So one thing to consider is that, again, there is a big ergonomic piece to what we do. We're having to hold a very static pressure while we take our images. Saying that, that's one thing that we will teach our students is how to be ergonomically aware and promote ergonomic good ergonomics best practice right from the beginning of the career. We are imaging a three-dimensional organ, and we're imaging it in a two-dimensional world. We're taking slices, ultrasound slices of the heart, and really interpreting and looking at that heart from many different slices. So you need to have a good 3D spatial awareness and manual dexterity and be able to link those two. Of course, it goes without saying we require interprofessional teamwork. Although cardiac sonographers work independently while they're doing the exam, they are part of a healthcare team. And it is important to understand best practice on how to work within a healthcare team. It is a technically demanding profession, and it requires dedication, passion, very high work ethic, and obviously to be open to feedback, because if we don't learn from our mistakes, then we can't improve as professionals. Next slide, please. There's many career opportunities aside from becoming a diagnostic cardiac sonographer. Once you are licensed to be able to practice ultrasound in Ontario or across Canada, you can become a practitioner in a hospital or a private cardiology clinic. There's other avenues aside from working with our patients. We have many graduates that have entered into the research realm of cardiac sonography and cardiology, as well as many graduates that have gone into the commercial application piece, which means working with the big ultrasound companies to help not only further the technology, but also to support support cardiac sonographers as they learn this new technology. So being able to teach cardiac sonographers how to best use their tool, which is the ultrasound machine. We also have sales and marketing positions in cardiac sonography. Of course, I am one that is in the career opportunity of teaching. Again, I am a cardiac sonographer by trade, but I have been able to come first full circle and be able to teach what I am very passionate and love. As I mentioned already, the employment potential is huge. There is a need for cardiac sonographers across the nation, and I continue to see that trend. Every year we have our graduates finish this program and get jobs as soon as they have finished. Next slide, please. So just as you know, you've got a little bit of an introduction to what cardiac sonography is, and really what does it take. And you know, I won't go through these, but just have a look at some of these lists when you're thinking about applying and trying to understand what the profession is. These are some really key criteria or best, sorry, I've lost my train of thought, but good attributes for a cardiac sonographer to enter into the career. So have a look at these and say, you know, I have these skills, or I can work on these skills, or these are some of the skills that I will exit the cardiac sonography program with. And next slide, I think I have one more. So this is just a little bit about the program. And so obviously within this program and program of studies, we're going to teach you all the skills, all the didactic knowledge to be able to perform a cardiac sonography exam or an echo. We have 2 didactic semesters followed by 2 clinical semesters. And in those didactic semesters, we have our theory classes, we have our skills classes, and then of course, the last 2 semesters are our clinical competency or clinical courses. You will be using equipment from the beginning of the program in our skills courses. So using ultrasound machines to apply ultrasound physics principles as we image each other within our program, because ultrasound is non-invasive and there's no known bioeffects. So we're able to practice on one another within the program. We also, through our didactic semesters, in addition to the vast amount of didactic content that you have to learn about the normal heart and the pathological heart, we also teach high level of patient care skills, communication, and best practice that aligns with our Sonography Canada National Competency Profile. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the program length and the semester breakdown. As mentioned previously, we have 4 consecutive semesters totaling 54 weeks. Semester 1 and 2 is offered in a blended format, so you will have in-person classes with a combination or complement of online content. You will have classes on campus, which is the Institute for Applied Health Sciences, which is located at McMaster University's campus, and you will have some online course content as well. Semester 1, you have 6 courses, approximate of 212 hours, but you can, of course, we are an intensive program, so you can tack on a lot of homework hours, a lot of additional skills practice hours on campus. So we are a full-time program. Semester 2, there are 7 courses with slightly higher amount of hours, but again, you can attack on the amount of study hours, preparation hours, and skills practice hours, which happen on campus. Before I go into semester 3 and 4, semester 1 and 2 are intensive. This is a program that's been devised as a postgraduate program so that we're able to deliver in a different format. We're able to deliver a high amount of didactic knowledge in a short time period, which really lends well to the student completing the program and getting into the profession, which is really the end goal, is getting a postgraduate student the knowledge and skills that they require to be future ready. And we do that in 54 weeks, but to do that, we are doing it in an intensive fashion. And that's where, you know, when we get to the admission side of things, that's where we're looking for that high quality applicant that can step into the program with some prior cardiac anatomy and physiology knowledge, with either experience and content, so that we can hit the ground running. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I will just try to summarize a semester 3 and 4, our last 2 semesters, are clinical training. And that is a full-time commitment to practicing, learning clinical skills in a clinical placement that are affiliated with Mohawk College, and they are located, you know, within Ontario. We do require students to do clinical practicums at a minimum of 2 different clinical agencies, again, that may be located anywhere within Ontario. The program determines allocation of students to this site. So the sites are not student picked or student driven. We do a fair and equitable allocation to the clinical sites. And we want students to know that clinical placements may require a relocation, and that there may be sites that are not accessible by public transport. And we do have to have students relocate for that clinical term. Next slide, please. There are some preclinical requirements that are part of that preclinical piece of making sure that you meet all the requirements that are set by both Mohawk College and our clinical affiliate agencies to ensure the safety of not only the student, but also the patient. So there's a number of preclinical requirements that we have students go through our pre-placement services at Mohawk College to determine if they're eligible for their placement. We do have a clinical liaison, Miss Christine Portwood, that will work with students as they prepare to get ready for their clinical placement and get all their preclinical requirements done and complete. I'm not sure if I have another slide or if, is there one more?
Yes, no, that's it, Jennifer. Thank you so much for all that great information. So now I'm going to cover the admission requirements for the program. So the academic requirements, applicants must possess one of the following qualifications. So they must be a registered diagnostic medical sonographer, or a graduate of a 2-year registered health professions diploma program with 6 credit hours in human anatomy, physiology, or equivalent, and 6 more healthcare related credit hours. So some examples are of those health care related hours: ethics, psychology, patient care, medical research. Health occupations include, but are not limited to, medical radiation technologist, respiratory therapist, registered practical nurse, cardiovascular technologist, registered massage therapist, occupational therapist assistant, and physiotherapist assistant. Next slide, please. A graduate of a bachelor's or a master's degree in a registered health profession program with 6 credit hours in human anatomy and physiology or equivalent, and 6 more healthcare related hours. Degrees include, but are not limited to, Bachelor in Science in Kinesiology, BA in Kinesiology, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Bachelor of Medical Radiation Sciences, Bachelor of Health Sciences, Bachelor of Applied Health Sciences, and then also a Master's in Science in Occupational Therapy, and a Master's of Science in Physiotherapy. Applicants that have not been active in their profession within the past 5 years are not eligible to apply to the program. Next slide, please. All right, so now I will go over the mandatory additional selection criteria. So you will need to submit a current resume detailing duration and level of any patient care experience and names of courses and course codes requested under admission requirements section. The template can also be found on the program webpage. For document submission, an official original transcript of all post-secondary education must be submitted to Ontario colleges, as well as your resume, a copy of current registration or your license in your profession. It's not required for applicants who have not yet completed the admission requirements that they are applying under. Next slide, please. Mandatory admission requirements for all applicants for whom English is a second language. So you must submit TOEFL or IELTS scores, and it needs to be completed within 2 years of application. For TOEFL, it's 98 with a minimum score of 24 in each of reading, listening, and writing, and 26 in speaking, or your IELTS scores will need to be 7 with no band less than 6.5. Next slide, please. Document submission timelines. For spring 2022, the applicant document submission timelines are as follows. You will be required to submit your documentation to Ontario colleges on or before Wednesday, January the 12th. Any documentation received after January the 12th will not be reviewed. Incomplete applications will not be reviewed. For the fall 2022 intake, all required documents must be received by Ontario colleges on or before Wednesday, February 16th. Documentation received after February 16th will not be reviewed, and incomplete applications will also not be reviewed. All this information is available on the program page on the admissions tab. So please ensure that you carefully review that information. Next slide, please. All right, so I'll go over now some frequently asked questions regarding the diagnostic cardiac sonography program. So when is the deadline for application? So as I mentioned, please make sure you get your application in by the timelines that I had just previously mentioned. How many students are accepted into each intake for the program? So there are 44 students that are accepted for each intake. How many intakes of this program do you have? So we now have added a May 2022 intake in addition to our fall 2022 intake. If you do not have an imaging background, can you still apply? The answer is yes. However, applicants with formal education and training in medical imaging receive preference during the applicant ranking process. All right, next slide. All right, so we are going to open it up to any questions, and I'll have Sam moderate questions in the chat. And if you do have a question you'd like to unmute yourself, please raise your hand and we will call upon you once your time is ready. So I will open it up to questions regarding the program first, and then we will cover admission related questions. All right, Sam?
We just have an admission related question in the chat right now, so I'll be
okay.
So the one question we do have is, can we explain the best candidate, those who are best to succeed in the program?
I can take that question. So again, due to the intensive way we've packaged our program. We look for applicants that are going to be able to succeed through the program and succeed in the profession. Historically, the students with imaging backgrounds, cardiovascular technology backgrounds, kinesiology backgrounds, and nursing tend to do very well jumping into this program and then into this profession as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I don't see any other program related questions in the chat at this time. They're all admission focused. So just a reminder, if anybody does have any program related questions that they'd like to ask Jennifer, please feel free to unmute or you can place them in the chat.
I was actually kind of wondering how many of the jobs are also like do you have to have your CBT and sonography? Like, are there sometimes clinics that will want to see that you have both?
That's a great question. Thank you, Emma. As we know, there's a strong correlation between a student or a cardiovascular technology student or graduate and sonography. They're both highly dedicated to imaging and diagnosing the heart. Is it a requirement to have a CBT background to get into cardiac sonography program? No, it is not. Is it an asset to have to be a registered cardio tech and cardiac sonography? Yes, I do know or have heard from our clinical agencies that they do find that the cardiac sonographer that has a strong electrophysiology background, such as CBT, does lend very well, but it's not a requirement for entry to the profession. And at this point in time, our graduates have a blend of just pure cardiac sonography, and then I also have some that have the CBT and cardiac sonography, and they're all scooped up after program completion. So there doesn't seem to be a preference for only hiring the cardiac sonographer that has also CBT in their back pocket.
Awesome, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yes, we do have quite a few admission questions in the chat. So Tammy, for this one, I had a question regarding the resume, which is sent to Ontario colleges. Do we use the template provided on the program page? If so, can the resume be longer than one page?
You don't have to use, if I'm correct, Jen, the template. It is there as a guideline. I do encourage applicants to provide as much detail on the resume for Jennifer and the academic area, because they're going to be relying on your resume to give a good picture of you as an applicant. And I'm not sure, Jen, if you want to add to that, but you know, I see resumes come in from one page to, 2, 3.
Thank you, Tammy. I can that provides the academic team that are going through the application, really seeing the required information that really is important. So that our may.
I'm sorry, Jen, you were cutting in and out quite a bit there.
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I had just mentioned the team is looking for a concise resume that highlights the key criteria and key points that we want to evaluate.
Sorry, Jennifer, I think you're cutting out there.
I apologize. My internet does not seem to be the best at this point.
It's okay.
Yeah. I think what Jen's trying to say is that the academic area will be looking at the educational and work experience patient care that each applicant has. So, primarily looking at the admission requirements, like those key courses that they're looking for. But yes, the resume template is not mandatory. You can use your own resume if needed, as long as you're providing the details that the academic area are looking for. I hope that helps.
Thank you. So if the college has received a resume and other documents by mail for the fall 2020 application, do they still need to resend them for spring 2022?
No, if you know that you've already sent your fall resume and have your educational documents there, as admission advisor, I have access I'll be looking, your resume and educational documents will be attached to your application. I should be able to see that.
Another question. So are we allowed to apply to both the spring and fall intakes, or can it only be one of them?
No, you can apply to both. Just again, a reminder for the spring 22 intake, your required documents, resume and educational documents and other supporting must be at Ontario colleges no later than Wednesday, January 12th.
And we have two questions around the 44 spots in the program. So one applicant asked, how many applicants usually apply for the 44 spots? And how many of those applicants do you see looking at past years?
In previous years, we've had well over 200 applicants apply for the fall intakes. Since our May 22 is a new intake, they'll be accepting the 44 students right now. Currently, as of today, I think we have approximately 40 who have applied, but until they go through the admission processing, to see if they meet eligibility. But right now, we're close to that seat capacity now who have applied. But applications are coming in daily for the program.
So if someone is a permanent resident and English is their second language, will they need to get their grade 11 and 12 English and also pass a TOEFL test?
Well, as it's a post-secondary grad program, so anyone using educational documents internationally and would be required to have a transcript evaluation, of course by course. So anyone applying with an international education would need to provide a TOEFL or IELTS. They must meet the English proficiency requirement.
We have a question from Kinsley. They graduated from the biotechnology program from Mohawk McMaster and are wondering if they have all the prerequisites required to apply, or if there are certain courses that can be taken to become eligible.
Jen?
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Great question. Hard to answer without seeing the scope or program of studies of that degree program. But if you can demonstrate the required anatomy and physiology credits that we have on our admission requirements, in addition to other healthcare related courses, biomedical ethics, any patient care related. So if you can demonstrate that you have met that admission requirement from a core standpoint, then you would meet the admission requirement.
Thank you. We have a question. Do we require a reference letter when applying, for example, from a professor?
Well, as admission advisor, any supporting documentation, I do include it for Jennifer. However, Jen may have to also respond whether it's of further usage, but it's not a mandatory having references. Am I correct, Jen?
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. We historically actually did have that as part of this program admission was letters of reference, but we actually did away with that criteria, being just solely focused on the education, required courses, and patient care experience piece, because we felt that that was a better indicator of a quality applicant. That would lead to program success. So you are welcome to add them in, but they're not necessarily part of our admission scoring when it comes to the academic team.
So on admission eligibility profile, what is the postgraduate score? That is the only requirement not met on this person's profile. And they're wondering if that is something that they need to add or if it's something they can fulfill.
The post-grad scoring is the final scoring that Jennifer and her academic team provide me. So that will remain at 0 until the final scoring has been completed for each applicant.
Thank you. We have a question. An international medical graduate, are there chances for admission higher or not? Can you please give some information regarding IMG's intake of this program?
Jen?
Yep, sure. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So yes, we do have international medical graduates apply to the program. And again, they do have meet the requirements for anatomy and physiology and patient care. So they are another program that meets the eligibility for intake into this program and are a good applicant for success in the program.
Our next question is, this person has a psychotherapist background, but registration is with the College of Social Workers rather than the College of Psychotherapists. Would this be sufficient as per qualifying for the registered health profession, or do they need to register with the College of Psychotherapists as well?
Thank you for that question. And that is a really good question. We are looking for, when we're looking at the admission requirements, we do want to make sure that our applicants, that if they are part of a regulated health profession, that they are meeting those standards. And that's why we do ask for current registration in the regulated health profession. Provided you are in the health profession, obviously applicants that are working on their postgraduate studies in a regulated health profession but haven't yet graduated, we obviously cannot require that registration. But yeah, we do want to make sure that if you are part of a regulated health profession with that education, it's nice to see the registration so that the academic team has an understanding that you're meeting a certain set of healthcare professional requirements, which again really just makes you a good qualified applicant to come into the cardiac sonography profession.
The next question is, are you planning to continue a May intake, and why did you choose to launch a May intake?
I can take that question. Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Thomas. I'm the Associate Dean from the Allied Health and Medical Radiation Sciences portfolio for Mohawk College. The answer to the question is, yeah, we are going to continue with a summer intake. That's the intention. We're posting for some new staff. And we just see that there's a common desire, lots of applications to these postgraduate certificate programs. So I see this, are there any Mississauga campuses? There are, we do not have a Mississauga campus. We are located on McMaster University's campus at the IAHS. That's where our diagnostic cardiac sonography program is delivered. So I hope that answers your question.
So we have a question for Melanie. They understand that fall 2021 is being delivered all online with the exception of 2 scheduled campus visits. Will that online delivery be an option for spring 2022 and fall 2022?
The answer, I mean, Jen and I haven't, the pandemic has changed the process. The reason why our delivery was online was based on the pandemic. The pandemic is a constantly evolving process. So what I say right now is based on where we are standing today. And today, the answer to the question would be, there will be face-to-face lectures, probably a combination of both. Your faculty members will be looking at the schedule to make sure that they're not inundating you and making you come to campus every single day. But we do have skills on campus 2 times a week. So you're already on campus twice a week for that piece. So it will be a combination of both face-to-face. It is a full-time program. Work and attend that program at the same time. It would be extremely difficult.
Thank you. We have a question from Victoria. They have a bachelor's of psychology degree. Would this consider them to be successful into getting into the course? And as part 2 of the question, when do you find out if you've been successfully admitted into the program?
I can answer the first part, or sorry, I guess it's the second part of the question about the bachelor degree of psychology. It's a great question, and we have many applicants come from many different types of bachelor science degree programs. And I would like to say that everyone meets the criteria having a bachelor degree in a healthcare related science program. But we have already answered the question with the strongest applicants come from postgraduate degree programs that are in regulated health professions, such as medical imaging, such as cardiovascular technology, nursing, medical radiation sciences. And it's a highly competitive and very oversubscribed program. So to answer your question about bachelor of psychology, you would meet the admission requirement, but might not necessarily meet the top 44 of applicants that receive offers, depending on the applicant pool for each year. Every year it's slightly different.
And then Tammy.
And if I can add, so for the May intake, as said before, January 12th is the deadline to ensure all your admission and supporting documents are in by January 12th. And that gives me further time to have all of the applicant packages completed and sent on to Jennifer and her team for scoring. So the post-grad scoring will remain at 0 until Jennifer returns all the scoring to me. And we're looking at first round offer release should be around mid-March for the May intake. And then February 16th is the deadline for all documents to be received at Ontario colleges for the fall intake. And then we'd be looking at mid-May for release of first round offers for fall.
Thank you. Next questions are in respect to the resume. So the first question is, the resume section has a section involving required courses. Are we required to have every single prerequisite course in our undergraduate degree listed in the resume, or are there certain courses that should be highlighted?
What I suggest to applicants, applicants can pick they have to have the physiology and anatomy, as well as 6 health-related courses. But I do know, and Jen can add to this, that they will be reviewing your all of your educational transcripts. But if you have more than 6, I know I have said in the past, if an applicant is unsure which to use, they can list them. But maybe this is a good time for Jen to reflect on that, because she's, her team's the one reviewing the applicant.
Thank you, Tammy. Yes, the healthcare related and anatomy and physiology courses, we ask the applicants to highlight them on the resume template so that it provides the scoring team a quick snapshot. And from there, we can go into your transcript and have a good understanding if those courses truly are, meet the criteria for 6 credit hours of anatomy and physiology and healthcare related. If you feel you have more, please feel free to add them. It's depth and breadth. The more anatomy and physiology and especially patient care or healthcare related courses, to me, that makes, that's strong applicant. You're coming into a program that is going to ask you of this skills and prior knowledge. And so if you feel you have more, please highlight them on your resume.
Thank you. We have another resume focused question. So in terms of resume, should we only include relevant patient care / work experience, or should we include all experience, whether it relates or not to date?
Is it okay if I take that question, Tammy?
Yes.
Our preference would be to really put a lens or, a highlight on the patient care related experience, and whether that was volunteer, whether that was in an outpatient setting, whether that's in an acute care setting, in a cardiology based setting. We really want to see how much patient care experience you have. And even if that might be as only at a clinical placement. So if it's more part of your education, your prior educational program of studies, please add your clinical placement hours if it relates to patient care experience. So we don't necessarily need to see other work-related experience. We really want that lens to be on what your patient care experience looks like.
Thank you. Can you give us an idea of what the schedule will look like for this program, starting times, finishing times, and will they be in class 5 days a week?
I can take that, Jen, if you like, just so that you can get a sip of water. So the schedule itself is really 9 to 5 for your education. Most of our labs are done by 4:30, sometimes 5:30, but I will say that there are expectations that a student participates in practice scanning time, which is in evening hours. It's been proven over the years that the participants need to be practicing to bring their skills up to a level to see a success at the end of the semester. So we actually, although it's not mandatory, it's optional. We do use that information to support the students' promotion and how they're doing. If a student is not participating in practicing in the evening hours and then struggles, it just sort of translates to it's basically your homework. And the only place that you can do that homework is at the campus. So there are days that are longer. Jen, was anything to add on that?
No, other than, like I said, we can't comment on what the May or the fall intake schedule actually looks like. Many factors go into to making the schedule, including faculty, part-time faculty availability. So we really can't comment on whether it will be 5 days a week, 3 days a week, or 2. But as Laura mentioned, it is a full-time program with a heavy course load and a heavy requirement to be on campus for skills-based courses and skills-based practice.
Thank you. We have another question. So can you speak to the comparison between the diagnostic cardiac sonography program and the cardiovascular technology program? Would you say cardiac sonography is a natural next step?
I will start it off, and Laura, perhaps you can finish it. They are both great programs and therefore both great professions. And it really is hard to answer whether cardiac sonography is a natural next step. We do have lots of cardiovascular technologists come into the program. And as I mentioned early on in our session, it really, they complement each other. But we also have lots of lots of opportunity within the cardiovascular technology profession where students really find their position and get their feet wet, and there's so many avenues within that profession as well. So they're complementary, but not necessarily have to be a next step to go into cardiac sonography.
Yeah, I agree. They're both great programs. And it's funny because the reason I smiled when the question was asked is because a lot of the students choose cardiovascular CVT and then go on to DCS. And our CVT team will often say, we need CVT grads as well. Both are good opportunities for working. Obviously, having both, you are a huge asset to the community. So doing CVT first and then cardio and then diagnostic cardiac sonography, because you have such a robust understanding of just the clinical picture of the heart. So that's a fantastic question, and often one discussed at our meetings.
Thank you. Our next question is for Tammy. This person applied last year and they have a resume on Ontario colleges, but in the past year have gained more experience. Would both the resumes be looked at, or just the new one that was submitted?
I would be looking for an updated resume. So yes, you know, definitely if you've gained more experience, you want Jennifer and her team to see that on your resume. So I can't go back, and not always Ontario colleges. There's only a time frame when I can access the last year's educational documents and that. But if you're applying for a new application cycle, you should always ensure an updated transcript and a new resume and supporting documents are included. And if I can, on that note of the educational documents, for those who are currently in progress of completing their degrees, just a reminder that to meet the documentation submission, so for May, January 12th, you should have an in-progress transcript sent to Ontario colleges that shows, Jennifer, you are in progress of completing your degree. And then you, anyone who receives a conditional offer is based, if you receive and you are in progress, you must provide a final transcript that shows that you have been awarded your credential.
Thanks, Tammy. Our next question is, they completed an exercise physiology and metabolism course, as well as a clinical exercise physiology course. Will these be accepted as a required physiology course for admission?
Thank you, Tara, for your question. Again, going through the required courses that meet the anatomy and physiology, and for that matter, the healthcare related courses. If there's ever a course that's in question, we follow up with our admission team, and usually the admission team might request that student to send in a course syllabus or a course outline if there's any question about that. Of course, when we have applicants coming from all over the nation, with many different educational institutions, those courses may be called something different. You know, so oftentimes if we're very unsure, we will ask the applicant. We do look for physiology, you know, as it pertains to the systems. And then of course, we obviously, that would count as physiology or exercise physiology course, but we'd also need to see the requirement in an human anatomy courses as well.
Thank you. Our next question is from someone that is internationally educated and they hold a bachelor's degree in respiratory therapy. Can they apply to the program if they're not a registered professional in Canada?
I mean, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. As an internationally educated applicant, you would be required to have your international studies evaluated. And we advise applicants to use WES or ICAS. If your first language is not English, you also need to meet the English proficiency, and you would be required to have an IELTS or TOEFL. And again, the admission requirements are clearly laid out through the program webpage under the admission tab.
Just to add to that, if you are a credentialed respiratory therapist in a country outside of Canada, as long as you can provide the admissions team with the proof of being a registered respiratory therapist, that is accepted.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Tammy, Jennifer, and Laura. There's no other questions in the chat. So just as a reminder, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in there before we wrap up the session.
I was actually just wondering about applying straight out of the CVT program. Do you guys expect us to have work experience first, or are we able to apply to the sonography right after graduating?
On the admission side, yes, Emma, you can apply while you're in progress, like your last year. You can apply to the DCS program. If you've taken the CBT through Mohawk, then as admissions, on the admission side, we have access to your transcript here. Jen, anything else to add?
No, just for any applicant that's still in process of their degree, that they can add for patient care experience, they can add any clinical placement timeline. So how long in clinical placement, what were your duties, and where the clinical placement was.
Right, I guess because just it does say that you have to be within the practice in the last 5 years, I guess, but that's like clinical practice is considered. That kind of thing, yeah.
I see one more question in the chat just about OTA, PTA graduate with clinical experience. Definitely your experience. We do look at applied patient care experience, but we also look at it from the quality of patient care experience. So an example, working within an eye doctor doing the intake is not, to me, direct applied patient care experience. We're looking for, dealing with the patient, communication with the patient, patient care. And so if you have obviously that clinical experience, we do score you based on the type and the length of amount of clinical patient care experience.
Gabriel, your message here, are you talking about general sonography or diagnostic cardiac sonography? You said, I noticed it before we offered another intake. Because we do have a general sonography program, and you are correct. In 2004, I think it was, we merged with McMaster, and now we deliver it as a degree program. So it's a collaborative program. Yeah. So, and it used to be isolated. So it was a 3-year general sonography program, but now it's a collaborative program with McMaster, and it's 4 years. So although you'll still see that on our website, the application process is through McMaster. And the students are still taught partially by Mohawk faculty. Hope that answers your question.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tammy, Thank you to Jennifer and Laura for all that great information. We hope this leaves all of our participants confident to apply to the Diagnostic Cardiac Sonography program. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us today. If you have any program related questions that you can't find answers on the program page, please reach out to Jennifer through email, and you'll find all the contact info on the slide. And if you have any questions regarding your application, please connect with admissions by filling out the form using this link provided. If you have any questions regarding your OSAP application, you can also contact the financial assistance department by filling out the form using this link provided. If you need assistance with next steps, the application process and deadlines, or have any additional questions, please reach out to the Discovery Center and we'll connect you with one of our advisors. You can also contact us by filling out the form or by calling 905 575 2460. Thank you again for joining us and have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.